I haven't heard from Hong Ho and kind of quiet at this end. Here's a good one. What technical contributions do you think, or technical or non-technical contributions, do you think modern art has brought to art in general up to this present day? Quan?
You might as well ask me what the meaning of art is.
To think about.
Are you asking me what is art?
No.
No.
I can't imagine we went through 100 years without something good coming out of it.
Boy, that's a tough question. What?
Except that you're both
modern art. Well, what we're making art today, the art that we're making today is modern, isn't it? And
well, I'm using modern art in the sense of that period.
The abstract period?
Yes.
I think, well, certainly I can speak for myself. I think a lot in the sense that before the Impressionists came along, and I talk about this art happened on 3 different levels in some of my DVDs, which would take too long to go into right now, but art happens on 3 different levels, and throughout art history, or our perception of reality happens on 3 different levels. The first one is what I call based on assumption. We went through a period in human history where we assumed what reality looked like. A face has 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, you know. And when we have an apple, we talk about an apple, Carolyn was talking about this last night, as human beings we have an image or a symbol of what that apple looks like. And she was talking about that being just a 7-year-old level, 7 or 8-year-old. We have this image, so when we learn to draw and paint, we paint an apple as it is ingrained in our mind what it looks like, not what the apple actually looks like. We never really looked. So art actually went through that period for a long time where, you know, face looked like face, it had to be this, that, and the other. The Impressionists came along and they started throwing colors on there for its own sake. And people said, wait a minute, things don't look like that. You know, and it took a little while, but then you realize, oh, they're actually playing with color and values and shape for its own sake. And when you really consider a color or a shape or a value, those are abstract ideas to me. So a color is an abstract thing, a value is an abstract thing. And as artists, when it comes down to it, we have a very simple set of tools. Line, shapes, value, color, texture, and edges. Those are all abstract things. We put them together in a hopefully harmonious way to create in a composition that makes some sense, like a great piece of classical music. It's just A, B, C, D, E, F, G, a few flats, a few sharps, and somehow you put it together in a way that creates this beautiful harmonious whole. And that's what I call the second level. When you get onto the second level, you stop assuming and you ask questions. Does a face have to be pink? You know? And it took me a long time because, you know, when you begin to learn to paint, you have to, you know, you buy a tube of flesh color, right? And you try to mix that pink. But you realize, no, a face can be greenish pink, bluish pink, yellowish pink, depends on whatever the light is doing to it. But ultimately what it comes down to is that we're dealing with line, shape, value, color, texture, and edges. And what you do with that, and when you're in your studio like a scientist, and you ask yourself, how many different ways can I paint that face color, or the sky, or eventually it comes down to, it's just a hunk of color. How is it that this hunk of color, like this, against this hunk of color, there's no face here, you know, how when you paint a certain way, those 2 pieces of color are beautiful together, like 2 beautiful chords of notes coming together, making a beautiful sound. And it's, to me, that's abstract. And I think the modern art world, I would like to say that, you know, it started with the Impressionists. They made that jump, and then they got onto that second level. And what I found is that all the great art movements, anything that really was meaningful in painting, happens on the second level. It's never about beliefs. It's never about, I believe this is right. You go in there and you try to discover that, you know. But what happens with the modern art world for a long time is the BS level got to such a high degree that it just doesn't go. It has nothing to do with truth. And to me, when you're playing with color and value and abstract on an abstract level, it's very truthful. But when you start to say that it's somehow higher truth than what we experience, that's a little vague. It's like this when I was talking about judging an art show. I can't judge on what subject matter you decide to paint. But as soon as you put it down on canvas, I can judge that. Because it becomes color against color, value against color, notes, you know. And I can look at a painting and, you know, like a mechanic, we tweak that a little bit, this is going to work, and so on and so forth. So I think the great abstract painters like de Kooning, Richard Diebenkorn, one of my favorites. Richard Diebenkorn, he's wonderful, and you know, those two are wonderful, and what Joni Mitchell did with color was wonderful. And so there's certain abstract painters to me that are as truthful as John Singer Sargent or Rembrandt could ever be. They just deal with color and values and shapes in a different way. But then, on top of that, there are a lot of BS out there. Where, you know, there are giants in the modern world that, am I going to get in trouble by names? I don't care. I went to, for example, I went to see a Mark Rothko exhibit, retrospective in New York. And here's this, you know, people worship this guy. And I walked through and I said, okay, good, the color choices are really interesting. But that was all I had to say for it. You know, it was like, after a while, it's like watching somebody try to decide what color to paint the walls. You know, their interior walls. There was no exploration of paint. There was no personal exploration of what painting means at all, other than color choices. And well, okay, one more point. I was having a conversation with my wife Nancy Switzer, who's a wonderful colorist, and we were trying to figure out. This was after we went to a panel discussion at the Denver Art Museum, where they had the curator from the Hirshhorn, from the Modern Art Museum, and we were so excited. We wanted to hear something enlightening. The whole evening we came home, we couldn't believe it, because the first thing out of the Hirshhorn Museum curator was, okay, there's no good and there's no bad. That was the first thing he said, and we looked at each other, and so we waited the whole evening and nothing came out. So we came home and said, you know, what is good art and what is bad art? And so Nancy was so brilliant, she said, good art is difficult to imitate. And I totally agree with that. You know, because I can see, you might understand what Richard is doing, maybe, or what Jeremy's doing, or what Sherry's doing, what Sargent or Rembrandt did, but you can understand the technical aspect of it, but try to do it. You can't do it. You don't have the same sensibility, but I can copy Rothko all day long. And I understand that. I can break that stuff down like it was you know, like I can fix a car if I knew something about mechanics, because the nuts and bolts are there. But that's different than, so that's a long answer, just.
What do you think, Jerry?
Well, yeah, I agree.
Did you understand everything he said? I thought he mentioned 3 levels.
Yeah,
what was the 3rd level?
Real quickly. You know, this is an interesting thing, because these ideas came to me in a very honest way. Okay. The 3rd level, so the 1st level was based on assumptions and beliefs, and we can.
By the way, did you guys pass your questions this way and get them collected by somebody? Did that happen? Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, quick one. So the 1st level is based on beliefs and assumptions, and we can all have our own belief systems, and it's all correct, personally, right? 2nd level, you put all that aside and say, okay, is it true or isn't it true? Let's go figure it out. Let's ask the questions. Never mind what I believe in. The 3rd level is what I call intuitive level or the spiritual level. And in a way, it applies to everything we do, whether you're a painter, a musician, or a writer. We all hope to get into this, some people call it the zone. And when I'm in that level, there's no fear, right? There's no ego. There's no worry about I'm doing this right, I'm doing this wrong. You don't care who likes it or who doesn't like it, you don't care if it sells or not. But it's pure performance. Well, no, that's not even it. It's pure being there, this mysterious thing that we talk about that the photograph can never get you there, really, in a way. It's that, it's there all the time, but most of the time we're stuck on the first level. And when you ask a little kid, they're there all the time. And so I think that in the hands of a great master who's painted, all of his life.
Would you say that's the level of Satori? Very oriental, I think. Okay, Sherry, it's your turn.
Well, okay, what question am I answering?
The question is there, what technical things or what are the accomplishments of what we call modern art?
Yeah.
As far as if any, I mean, you don't have to.
Yeah.
You think it's zero, just say so. Hand the mic to
Well, I used to be a guard at the Met in New York. I was a
You were
guard.
a guard?
I was a guard at the Met. It was the best job in the world. And I was stationed at the 82nd Street entrance. And someone came up and he was doing this art thing, and he had tied a string to the National History Museum, and he had taken it all the way across Central Park, and he wanted to know if he could tie it someplace on the Met, and that was his artwork. And the thing is, when I was living in New York, I came up with ideas like that, all the time. Things that would go over in Soho. I mean, you could sit around all day long and come up with very clever ideas. And so I'm wondering what the contribution is, and I think that because they're now, I would say that the people that are in power in the art world, certainly in the art institutions, the universities, the museums, it is encouraging this, whole new generations of people that are just being clever. So, is being clever really is that something that's admirable? Is this really what we're wanting? When I was 23, I was coming up with ideas that later ended up happening in Soho. I wouldn't have the heart to do them, but we could all come up with clever ideas all day long. Is that really, anyway, but it's what society is rewarding, so it's what's considered important work, and realistic work isn't considered important.
That's fascinating
today.
what you just said.
Yeah.
The society rewards us for those things, particularly the media rewards us for those things, don't they?
But I'll tell you something.
Anybody else would like to jump in on this one?
I have one thing to add. You talk about modern art, and one of the important things that, in my mind, if we look at the past 100 years of art history, that I feel we need to remember, if nothing else, some of the work, and I'm not talking about the work that we've already acclaimed as full of too much verbal description and not enough visual appreciation for what's important. But the one thing is just the fact that it's paint can be paint. In other words, when I teach, I tell my students we cannot replicate this, we can only interpret. And ultimately, it's an illusion of our three-dimensional reality on a two-dimensional surface. So in other words, it's not real. Get over it. And so if, for example, in some areas of my painting, I want to develop the information and create that illusion of three dimensions, there may be other areas on the painting where it's, I can say to myself, it's paint. It's line, shape, value, color, and it can be just a color. Color has power. The contrast of shapes can have power. Contrast of value can be incredibly strong. So it doesn't always have to be something. And I think if nothing else, we have that power, if you will, to take realistic painting to another level.